Net zero by 2050 is a total pipe dream. It's going to be a grand failure, and it's not I who is saying this. There's a group called Climate Crisis Advisory Group, CCAG, and they have been saying this for a long time, at least since last 3-4 years, that the global policymakers are not taking enough action on their side to reduce global emission. I mean, they are saying that our target is so and so, but even if they meet their target, that would be insufficient. I mean, why are they saying this? I mean, you don't even need to think why they're saying this. Just think about yourself, or if I think about myself, whatever the countries and the government is saying about global emission and their steps that they are going to take, or the steps that they have taken, what impact it has on my own lifestyle or on your lifestyle. I'm still driving the same car. My consumption of fossil fuel has not reduced. I don't know how my own action has reduced the carbon footprint. So if I am not impacted in any way by whatever action the government has been taking, how do I expect the carbon emission to go down? So I don't think what the government is saying and what they're doing actually makes sense. And these policymakers, the CCAG group, they're saying that even if you achieve the net zero, it's not going to make any significant impact. First of all, what is this net zero? Net zero does not state that we would stop producing carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases. All it says is that we will keep producing greenhouse gases, but at the same time, we would either absorb it at the source of production so that it does not enter the atmosphere, or if you are unable to do that, then at some other place at the same time, someone else would be able to absorb or remove carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases from the environment. So on the net basis, on the overall basis, there will be no new addition of greenhouse gases, which is good and necessary, but it is not sufficient to reduce the global warming effect. If we just look at the trend of the global trend of carbon emission in the last 20 years, look at this chart. You see, during around 2000, the total emission was roughly 25 billion tons annually. And today, around 2022, 2023, the total global addition of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases is nearing 40 billion tons. So we have actually increased the addition of greenhouse gases by 50% in the last 20 years. So the two does not add up. On one hand, we are all saying we have a policy in place for net zero. On the other hand, the data says something entirely different, which shows kind of the failure in the policy making and the policy execution. So what is actually needed is not just net zero, but net negative. We need to remove, we need not just to stop producing any more carbon dioxide and other GHGs, but at the same time, we also need to remove the pre-existing GHGs from the atmosphere to a level which would allow the earth to cool rather than get warmed. Unless we do that, there is no hope, not according to me. So what is needed actually is very simple. You need to reduce your emission. You need to remove whatever emission is already existing in the atmosphere from the historical period. Basically we have been adding billions and billions tons of CO2 in the atmosphere since 1800. And then the third thing is to take steps to repair the damaged climate system wherever we can. Unless we do all these three, we won't be able to meaningfully impact, we won't be able to do anything in a meaningful way to reduce the global warming. And let's say we are able to successfully remove, reduce, and repair the climate system. Does that mean that there will be no global warming? And according to me, the answer is no. A clear cut no. Even if we are able to achieve all these three targets, there would still be global warming going ahead. And that is because by achieving these three targets, we have solved part of the problem, which was man made. But then the global warming is not only because of human interference in the environment, it is also because of the natural processes. And that is very nicely explained by Milankovich's cycle. What it basically says is that how much heat Earth receives from the sun is a function of three things: the Earth's eccentricity, the Earth's obliquity, and the Earth's precision of rotation on its axis. Eccentricity means the shape of the Earth's orbit in which it revolves around the sun. In, During some era, the Earth follows a very elliptical orbit. During other periods, that elliptical orbit changes more toward, it tends to be more toward a circular path. So when the Earth is in an elliptical orbit, during the summer months, the Earth is much more closer to the sun, and therefore it would receive on an average much more heat than the other period when the Earth's eccentricity or the shape of the orbit is circular or toward circular. So the shape decides how much energy we are going to receive. The second thing which decides is the tilt of the Earth axis. The Earth rotates on its axis, not on a perpendicular axis, but on a slanted axis, which makes an angle of roughly between 22.1 degree to 24.5 degrees. And currently, that angle is 23.5. And the shift from 22 to 24 degrees happens every 46,000 years, and the change in the eccentricity happens every 100,000 years. So there's a periodicity, there's a cycle which decides whether the Earth is in the era of global warming or global cooling. And these things have happened in the past, not just once, but many times. We have seen Earth having at least 5 or 6 ice ages, and then the intermittent period when the Earth had a runaway increase in the global temperature, and it was much more hotter than it is today. And currently we are technically in an ice age, and we are moving toward a period when we would be in a much hotter temperature and climate conditions. And the third thing which decides the heat content received by Earth from the sun is the precision. The precision is basically how precisely it is rotating on that axis. It's actually rotating but in a wobbling fashion, and which means the axis also changes its direction from one direction to another direction. And all these three things combined together impacts global warming. So even if we are able to restrict our own impact on global warming, the nature will not stop. So does that mean that we should do nothing? Absolutely not. Because it has been well proven, well documented, that the amount of greenhouse gases that is in the atmosphere impacts the rise in the surface temperature directly. And that will be ample clear when you look at this graph. Look at this graph of carbon emission since thousands of years. This chart is in terms of the ppm, which is part per million, and for thousands of years the global ppm of CO2 was roughly between 150 to 250 ppm. Only after industrial revolution, which started around 1800, did this carbon dioxide particle in the atmosphere started rising significantly, and especially since the 1970s, it seems that the emission has skyrocketed, and we are now nearing around 400 ppm. What used to be between 250 and 300 is now 400, around 400, and soon it will exceed that also, which has its own severe consequence on the temperature, global average temperature. And if I plot the temperature on the same chart as you see right now, you will see in the last 50, 60 years, you can see how the global temperature has risen, and it follows the same path in which the carbon dioxide has increased, which means if we are able to reduce the carbon content, not carbon content, but the greenhouse gas content of the atmosphere, we may be able, not maybe, but we will definitely be able to reduce or restrict the march of this global surface temperature beyond 1.5 degree, which is the tipping point. So at least we will give ourselves enough time, maybe next few hundred years, so that we will either develop technology which would help us to face the ultimate impact of global warming, which would happen anyway because of the natural phenomena, or we may be able to have resources and technology which would help us to migrate to other planets like Mars or somewhere else. That is what Elon Musk is trying to do, isn't it? So my conclusion is, we cannot avert the global climate crisis. We can probably slow it down, and we should take every effort to slow it down. But currently, we are doing next to nothing to achieve that goal. Do you agree or disagree with my thoughts? I'd be happy to hear your feedback. Please give me your feedback in terms of your comments, and I would make sure that I respond to each of those comments. Thank you very much for watching this.